can we have a word from Professor Latif at this moment? I hope he's having a fun time. Professor Latif.
Yeah, I'm okay here. Huh?
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Thank you. And I was also happy to have listened to Dr. Chris. That was also quite because we missed him at the beginning. And I'm also still missing my chair, Dr. Taib, but I think, but then he's still on the call from what he shared with me. So in this new segment, we're going to have two panels, and this will be involving the initial panel that will be opened by Dr. Chris, the co-founder himself. And we are also going to expect on this panel Fiona Asonga, the president of the Kenya IPv6 Council, if she's on the call yet. And we're also going to have Frank Anati, Regional Coordinator, West Africa for Africa IPv6 Cybersecurity Task Force. Frank Anati, I think I had acknowledged his presence. And we are almost going to have our own Amazon, Ni Lola Adeyemi, the Chief Marketing Officer for Africa IPv6 Cybersecurity Task Force. And that's on the first segment. On the second segment, we're going to have Professor Zelalem Mengistu, the President, Ethiopia IPv6 Council. And we're going to have Jake Jones, Head of Infrastructure and Business Program Manager at BSV Association in Canada, and Dr. Riyad Hattani, the co-founder of Zona Partners, San Francisco, US. So I think for timing, we had actually structured that so that we can be good with the time zones. But then the first panel will just kick that off as of this moment. And while I acknowledge Mr. Temitope, which we're going to do this together, we will actually expect the first panelist who will just take a question. We'll take a question, and for a few minutes, share your thoughts. We'll take one question, a second, and we have a general, and that general will be able to, let us have a general overview of what we think, on a particular subject matter that is globally advancing the world, which is the artificial intelligence, as it were. Today, we've listened so much on IPv6. We've heard about how this is evolving in perhaps other continents, and Africa is also growing, as we can see from the speeches. So I will actually expect that we have Dr. Chris. Let me confirm that Dr. Chris.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let me also expect that I have Frank Anati.
Yes, I'm here. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Excellent. Very well. The sound is very good. It's almost like you're in Lagos, but I'm sure that must be Accra there, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
Right.
So,
the other will be our own Nilola Adeyemi.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning.
Excellent, excellent. And may I know if we have Fiona Songa, President of Kenya IPv6, on the call? So great. Hoping that could give us some additional time that we're seeking for better listing for. All right. So at this moment, permit me to on the first speaker, Dr. Chris Uwaje, Perhaps just introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you.
Let us have an introduction.
Amos.
Let's get to meet you. Let's get to meet you. In 60 seconds, let's get to meet you, sir.
Thank you very much, Amos. And of course, on behalf of the African IPv6 Cybersecurity Task Force, I wish also to welcome you, but need to submit that the real champion of this platform is founder and co-founder, Dr. Professor Latif Ladid, who has, of course, has sojourned all over the world, as an evangelist of this IPv6 movement. So I salute him exponentially. My name is Chris Uwaje, and I was privileged during the 1999-2000 Y2K survey to have pioneered the National Policy for Information Technology for Nigeria. And this has resonated all over Africa. So we are still there. I met Professor Latif Ladid in 1914 in Rabat at the World Summit Award, where my company was selected as one of those pioneer innovators. And ever since that, the bug of IPv6 and cybersecurity has been cut. And of course, that's why we are spreading the word that this is the time for Africa to wake up to the digital promise that is unveiled. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so very much. And being the starter of the segment, sir, please, I'm privileged to share the first question. And that being that this task force is a mission after your own heart. From your strategic vantage point, what is the single most critical action African national governments must take to mandate the secure IPv6 adoption as a matter of digital sovereignty?
Thank you very much, great man at Amos. I think for the privilege of the esteemed audience here on the platform, there is need for us. I think there are really two most critical factors, as it were, not just one. And for the digital sovereignty of Africa, those two most critical factors will be pillared within the first instructive need to amplify IPv6 adoption. And I will amplify it with respect to Africa as mandatory IPv6 adoption for Africa. Mandatory in the sense because Africa is a latecomer in the digital transformation ecosystem. And of course, these two most important mandatory adoption for IPv6 for Africa and digital sovereignty, just apart from education for all Africans, are, for example, you'll be looking at proactive digital governance and infrastructure control. Those are the keywords: proactive digital governance and infrastructure control. And this is imperative in order to supercharge and, of course, an uninterruptible power supply, which is very important. You cannot go to the moon without power. These are critical for keeping Africa data traffic in Africa at the speed of quantum computing and AI. There is no other way that I've seen that you can do that. You can do that with IPv4, okay? So the second will be the digital security and scalability aspect through, again, mandatory internet protocol adoption of IPv6. So those are critical pillars that we must interrogate. When governance is speaking about technology, they are not really aware of the imperatives of the speed to be able to deliver those policy instruments into action. Because as we speak, Africa is about 1.4 billion people. And of course, for every nanoseconds, we are having new entrants into that population. And if you want to track them, IPv6 addressing system is the key enabler for us to establish the governance. So the mandatory aspect of this IPv6 is very critical, as I said, and because we need to be able to ensure that we deliver them sporadically, across the. Because the need for ownership and control are strategic imperative, and they should be non-negotiable for Africa. It's about data. If we page in within the cluster of the supposedly map of Africa, which of course we know is about 3 times bigger than what we have on scale on the world map. Africa has about 3,000 languages, which of course you map them into one. You're talking about quantum data. I don't see any other continent, not even South America has that. Those are huge resources. If you translate those languages, people, into the hidden resources under the earth crust, then automatically you are going to stop wondering why people are coming into Africa, while explorers are coming into Africa for the past 5 centuries, 500 years, and they're still coming. So Africa has the inexhaustible resources to be able to feed the world. But then that has to happen at the control and, of course, of the African data sovereignty. So I'll stop at that so that other people can also get into it before we get into the issue of scalability and security aspect of how we can augment those data control and, of course, amplify the speed for global competitiveness within the ambient of accelerating digital education, scaling up Africa, and a lot of issues. And don't forget, when we talk about Africa, we're not just talking about the African man. We are talking about Africa, men, children, women, girls, everybody at the speed of empowerment, digital empowerment, and innovation. Thank you, sir.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so very much there. I appreciate all those insights. Thank you so very much. I want to move next now to Ghana, where we'll be speaking with Mr. Frank. Now, please focus on capacity building in West Africa. What are the most effective ways to build local IPv6 security expertise? No, should we focus on academia, certifications, or hands-on workshops for existing professionals?
Okay, thank you for the question. It's great to be part of this panel. And I would say when it comes to building expertise in IPv6, I would say we have to actually look at a hybrid approach. That's the most the best approach. You can't just leave out any other, because being academic, when you talk of certifications, hands-on practice is all needed. So when it comes to academics, we have to look at encouraging universities to actually embed the IPv6 and the cybersecurity into the core curriculum. So it shouldn't just be, security shouldn't be more of an elective, but it should be part of the core subjects that every person needs, because the security of your digital assets is very valuable. When it comes to certification, we can look at promoting vendor neutral certifications, and we also have Afrinic that has the Afrinic IP Academy, where they also offer IPv6 engineer certificates, and that's something that could help build up expertise, because with these, it helps validate your skills and also help attract global opportunities when it comes to IPv6. And last but not the least, looking at hands-on workshops, we need to use real-world labs to actually simulate secure configuration, because if you don't configure the IPv6 world, people can have access. There can still be bad actors that have access to your infrastructure, even though you are using IPv6. And also, we look at the simulating IPv6 attacks and defense strategies that would actually bring a concrete hands-on skills to whatever you learn to actually give you the real world expertise to implement. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Right. Those perspectives clearly actually speaks to what has been happening and to the general mission. And I will at this point also want to tackle Nilola Adeyemi. I would like to, Nilola, are you on the call? Now,
Yes,
please.
I am.
Excellent. May we know a practical challenge, visibility, what are the first concrete steps an organization, security team must take to gain visibility, control over IPv6 traffic to eliminate dangerous blind spots? From your heart security official and expert.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here. It's been an interesting session since morning. Looking at the visibility and control that the security team must have, when it comes to IPv6 traffic. One, you need to even understand what IPv6 is, and from all that we've been speaking since morning, the adoption is not as fast as the technology is moving, right? So the ability to be able to assess the IPv6 on your network is even one of the critical steps that you need to take. And what do I mean? So before you even start looking at the entire network, you need to check your current infrastructure, your current security infrastructure, right? You need to check your firewalls, your IDPS, your IPS, your SIMs, all the network monitoring solutions that you have, right? And you need to check which one of them is IPv6 enabled. And how do you do this? You need to verify the IPv6 support that is being licensed and enabled on those infrastructures that you have. Again, there are other steps that you can look at apart from just pinning down to a typical step to take when you're looking at visibility and control, especially when you're looking at it in the aspect of the blind spots. As much as IPv6 is here and we think there is a control that is more that there's a more stringent control compared to IPv6-4, right? Again, the attackers are looking at the loopholes, and the loopholes are there. So there has to be something around, there has to be like a massive network discovery when you're looking at IPv6, right? We have to use what is called like a massive passive listening, to discover where your IPv6 enabled devices are, and you have to also ensure that there's a network scanning. You have to be able to scan your network. So right now, you can use different different tools to scan your network. You can use like the Nmap tools to scan your network, and you make sure that right now you realize that the brute force scanning is on IPv6 is like more like effective, but with on IPv6 on IPv4 rather, but on IPv6, right, it's not effective. And that's why there's something called array guide that is more effective and more recommended when it comes to IPv6. So that's some of the steps that you look at. And again, you have to have your architecture of your IPv6. You can't rely on the architecture that you have. That's a network architecture. That's what I'm talking about right now. You can't rely on the network architecture that you're using for your IPv6, IPv4. You have to build its own architecture. And again, you have to also have your security policy when it comes to your IPv6. You can't maintain the same security policy that you have, because again, you have to look at areas like the acceptable use of the policy, like we have in the ISO 27001. You have to look at, who should have access and when they should have access. You have to be able to define the request that is being assigned on the IPv6 network and the space, right? And of course, again, you have to harden the network infrastructure, because as much as we're looking at getting into this technology, right, the attackers are also looking at the vulnerabilities that are available. I'll tell you one thing, and I'm not shading any OS. For instance, Windows, right, has this, default access when it comes to IPv6, unlike other networks, right? And you have to ensure that on your IPv6 network, you have it as, set as denial as instant. Otherwise, when attackers come, that's the first thing they do. They replicate what is already existing, and they want to use that to push the array messages into your IPv6. So these are the areas that we need to look at when we're looking at visibility, when we're looking at control, when we're looking at how to secure our IPv6. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for those insights, and they're quite helpful. We'll get back to the Oracle, and I think following on the position on the digital sovereignty, what can national regulatory bodies specifically do to encourage not just adoption? That's Dr. Chris now. Not just adoption, but secure adoption. Should minimum IPv6 security standards be part of national cybersecurity policies, sir?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that is very critical and very interesting question, because first of all, you need to define who are the policy makers, all right? What are the background of policymakers? Because when you make policy, of course, policy need to be articulated. There has to be a framework. And this is not policy for government. It's policy for the nation by government. So there has to be a synergy of professionals from the industry who are going to be the ultimate users. There have to be researchers from the education, where you build up a national framework to design the policy that will scale and work. So in the first place, if you don't take the step of ensuring that you can scan, the robust representation of eggheads that could formulate that policy before you even present it to the public as stakeholders, then automatically you have a failed accomplice on the arrival. So going forward, you need to believe that the enhanced policy and cybersecurity issues are there to protect against emerging threats. And of course, when you talk about emerging threats, how do you discover those emerging threats? Of course, it is significant to make sure that really you are protecting the nation via, of course, the ability for economic stability, to be able to ensure that you can really rely on the infrastructure. Now, what about the development of the facilities that you adopt to implement the policy? Where do they come from? What are the critical technical policy for the usability importation of those aspects of infrastructure? Who controls them? Who investigates the backdoor of the listening devices and all without that really send back messages to the producers. Ordinarily, structures or infrastructure that has to be designed has to start from the local aspect of need. There has to be researchers on ground. I'll give you an example. The local government stacks that are placed in there for the connectivity of rural telecoms. Some of them are still using this 2G stacks, and they have that's base stations that convert all those things. But when you look at it critically, there are a lot of gadgets that are loaded on top of that, and that is not responsive to the local needs. And of course, that increases the latency and the drop cost that you see. I mean, when you go to the village, you experience really what the data need, as if there is an intentional technology design to create that perpetual dependency and latency of growth on the local area, which of course resonates in the rest of the country. So you need to have a significant architecture, blueprint, and roadmap that you can synergy to be able to now authenticate the functionality of those equipments that you are acquiring. And in other cases, what are the benefit of your technical education if they cannot produce a substantial, say 30%, 40%, or 50% of those equipments, or do the design of what will be molded from your providers? Those are critical aspects of policy. So policy will be really not just for the public that consume. Policy should focus on acquisition of that technology and what role is government and the people playing for its control, because they are the users. At the same thing can be equated to medication and drug. You import everything, chalks, chemicals, and whatever, and hey, yes, they are given approval to come into the country. But what we are saying, why can't we design those specifications of the medicine to be produced or in country, or when they are imported, they have to be in conformity. We know that NAFDAC is doing a lot of things. So there are layers of all this aspect of what we can define as the digital sovereignty on IPv6. But I take you back into choosing the choice of driving your policy 21st century or this technical aspect of digital revolution with IPv4, or you drive it with IPv6. You will see, even a small kindergarten that plays, with toys, should be able to tell you that these issues that we are talking about is really not a pledge for, if I want. No, this is a mandatory responsibility of ensuring that the country can move forward, that the continent can move forward, and you have a synergy. And then we talk about compatibility. What is Africa doing in terms of equipment compatibility? Okay, if we have equipment compatibility in terms of sourcing and manufacturing, we can buy them in bulk, and then the price probably will be 20% of what each African countries are buying at colossal amount. And of course, how to repair them. So let me just skip there so that I'll give my panelists that time to be able to engage before I come to my closing remarks.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. I'm sure if we even allow that, we know where we'll be. So much insights yet. We appreciate that, sir. Thank you. So I'll move back once more to Mr. Anati. And we want to know, for a typical African SME, or a startup, as we call them, with a very little budget, how would you advise them to prioritize the investments, to achieve a cost-effective yet secure IPv6 deployment? Where should they start? SMEs.
Okay, thank you for the question. With SMEs, the first and foremost place I would tell them to actually start when it comes to the deployment, since they don't have that much budget
That's right.
for full implementation, they can look at a dual stack system. With that, at least with that, there would be they would avoid service disruptions once it's a dual stack system, while they actually use IPv4 and IPv6 while trying to transition to the IPv6. So I would advise the use of managed cloud services that offers built-in IPv6 support and IPsec encryption. So I think most of these cloud services, such as Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, and AWS, provide all have these kind of built-in IPv6 support already in their services that they provide. And also, I would advise they invest in basic end-to-end protection and VPNs, which are actually quite affordable, and also implementation of DNSSEC when it comes to their websites, and firewall rules that's tailored for IPv6 traffic, because that also helps. And also, as an SME, if you don't have that much resource, you can pool resources with other SMEs when it comes to implementation. You can share workspaces and group licensing, trying to implement some of these policies. And one thing too is to try and avoid NAT dependency, because NAT is not a firewall, as Dorothy Gordon stated earlier in her earlier submission during her presentation. So that's what I would like to add to it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I'm sure, even for myself as an SME, I think I've picked one or two stuff, which I think is already working for me. And I can see quite a couple of reactions, especially from Dr. Wallace, where I see the reaction between the Microsoft Azure and the AWS, but then we'll come to that at the right time. Thank you. Thank you so very much again, Mr. Nati. Okay, so I'll get to our Amazon, Ms. Neola DME. Again, I want to just get more specific. Could you highlight the IPv6 rogue router advertisement? That's attack vector, and explain how African network teams can both detect and prevent this.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's interesting. So I'll first start by defining what rogue router advertisement attack is. Usually what it does is, it's quite fundamental to network attacks, right? And it attacks the neighbor discovery protocol. That's the NDP, right? And it's I can relate it to IPv4 DHCP or IPv4's ARP. So that's what the rogue router advertisement attack vector is all about. That's what basically it's all about. Now, talking about how this attack happens, right? I mentioned earlier that the attacker would deploy the attack, right, by introducing a malicious node to the targeted network. So if the targeted network is maybe, for instance, Frank Bank in Ghana, if there's a bank like that, it will just introduce that malicious node to that particular bank, right, knowing that this bank just deployed IPv6 and they can see some vulnerabilities there, right? And how does it do that? It now comes to impersonate the existing node that they have. So it would broadcast an RI message to that vulnerability that it has identified, right? And it will now take the address of Frank's bank. He would use the default gateway, right? And he would now even replicate the prefix. You know, IPv6 has a prefix. It will replicate the prefix. So you have like maybe your IP with your new IP, you know, with the AAA, maybe your bank is AAA, you know, it will replicate that to get into the bank. And of course, again, he also uses the host reconfiguration. And, you know, we are all aware of the man in the middle attack in cybersecurity. He also uses that as well to, you know, get Frank's bank, right? And is drop on every traffic, everything that is going on that traffic, right? It will intercept all the messages. It will also, sometimes it even performs DOS, you know, denial of service, that the customers will think they're actually connecting to Frank Bank, but rather, you know, they're actually connecting to the attacker, who is the man in the middle, you know. So there's various ways that you can actually, you know, get attacked by the array, vector. But one thing I'll say is, number one, there has to be awareness. Awareness is very, very critical. And, you know, we've talked about awareness over and over today, and we can't stop talking about awareness. We have to train our engineers. We have to, you know, train people around us, just to let them understand that this is not the IPv4, you know, but this is IPv6. And we have to also be able to identify the risk, you know, the new risk that associated with IPv6. You know, remember I talked about setting the default, right? In IPv6, in some OS, that awareness needs to be there as well, so that they know that, look, any IPv6 address that you're not using, please remove it from the network, or, you know, deny it from the network, so that it's not open and it's not vulnerable to attack, right? And there has to be audits. You can automate your audits, you can manual audit as well, you know, but you need to audit your network to be sure that there are no vulnerabilities anywhere. And of course, you have to also implement what I mentioned earlier as ArrayGuard. ArrayGuard is the most, I think is the strongest so far now that's been discovered when it comes to cybersecurity on IPv6. So you need to ensure that all your switches are being managed, are being, you know, you've implemented ArrayGuard on all your switches, right? And this again, of course, is cost effective, and it will help you, you know, to be able to identify and even block any vulnerability or any attack that might come in. And of course, you have to set up a long-term plan to make sure that, you know, all the what you have to implement going forward, you know, they have their timeline and their stages. You remember that I also talked about the having a security policy for IPv6 earlier. You know, it's very, I'm reiterating this again. It's very, very important, because if you have your security policy, you will know who to give access to and what to give access to. So for me, I think it's very important for the team in Africa to start looking at, you know, how to identify, how to know first, how to know your IPv6, and how to identify the switches, your routers, your devices down IPv6, right? How to manage it, right? And you need to also, you know, leverage on the benefits of IPv6 as against, oh, we are moving to another technology now, it's going to cost us money. But you need to look at the benefits as against, you know, not moving to IPv6. Again, like someone had said, one of the speakers, it will become obsolete and there will be no support for IPv4. So why don't we just jump into it now, and let's make use of, you know, the knowledge and the resources that we have, just like we have here at the African IPv6 Cybersecurity Task Force. There are lots of resources, there are lots of knowledge that we can get from here. So why don't we take advantage of that and ensure that, you know, we have effective and cyber-free, cyber-safe IPv6 being deployed. And just before I round off, I would like to say that your RA guard is your number one go-to when it comes to securing your IPv6. It will help you to catch, the vulnerabilities wherever they're coming from, the threats, wherever they're coming from, and of course, it will secure your network. Thank you.
Thank you so very much there. Musa, I'm sure you've become restless. I see your hand.
Yeah. Just to touch a bit on that Arigard stuff. As she described it, when you're having your network, you have your first hope router, right? And that's the route where every devices from your network will use to exit the network. She perfectly put it in the terms that someone can introduce a malicious device in the network and pretend that's a router. Therefore,
Right.
they will send you a fake router advertisement because NDP is made up of 5 essential messages. Neighbor advertisement, neighbor solicitation, router advertisement, router solicitation, and the redirect. So now if I can pretend that I am a router in your network, the way IPv6 operates is that you have a list of routers. So you might pick me as one of those routers. And this is a common practice that has been happening even in IPv4, especially with DHCP, where someone can come in your network and pretend they are a legitimate DHCP server. So she rightly put it very well that education is the first note in security. Education, people think that implementing complex firewalls and things like that is more important. The most important aspect in security is educating the users in your network. Imagine this worker, this employee in your office who has no clue about, let's say, worms, all these spywares and so on, and they are not aware. When they receive an email and there is a link in that email, they will click it. And when they click that link, it might be a malware that will now replicate on your network and cause harm. So first step, awareness. Yeah, training is very important. Now, secondly, she talked about ARIGAT. ARIGAT, the limitation with ARIGAT is that not all devices in the network support ARIGAT. Only sophisticated brands like Cisco, the Huawei's, and so on support ARIGAT. So now to push it further, you need to basically you need to secure NDP. And the way you secure NDP is when you are configuring your filter rules, right? You have to block any traffic that is undesirable on your network. And if you have like a demilitarized zone where you have your firewall and you have all other servers, you need to identify what router has the right, which device has the right on the network to be able to send this router advertisement. And then you create a filter, we call them a traffic matrix, where you don't allow any other device apart from this device to be sending router advertisements in your network. This is another way of that you can use ARIGAT in complement with the filters. But now, if you are on a network that you have devices, switches who do not support ARIGAT, you have to rely on filtering your NDP messages. And now, since we are in IPv6, remember what people did in IPv4? They will just go and filter anything. Like if you want to filter the ping, they will filter anything. If you do that, you are stopping the ICMPv6 protocol to operate. And you know that IPv6 rely a lot on ICMPv6. So you have to be, the network engineers themselves needs, the security engineers need a refresher course to understand how the protocol, the IPv6 protocol stack works, what to enable, what to disable in your network. So I'll stop there. In terms of this, the IPv6 security, Afrinic is coming up with a course on that. where we want to empower people with the knowledge on the risks, the limitation, and what to do and what not to do on IPv6 security. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musa. That was very insightful. Thank you. You're muted if you're speaking, Mr. Amos Otemitope. Thank you.
Actually, a great intervention there. And of course, that's actually the nature of this panel. And that was why when we had the opening speeches, these were actually the areas that we need to do some mind mapping with those statements that were made. And even right from Nilola's responses, I could begin to look at what exactly was read from the DG of NIDA, especially that document. If you pick that document and begin to punctuate and begin to put a Grammarly, technological Grammarly on it, to begin to see relationships with what this panel is actually dishing out. And I'm sure we'll get to that very shortly. Let me just put it this way. The next segment, thank you so very much, all the panelists. This next segment will be, I would like to bring back our oracle to that next segment. And we'll want to say that before this segment closes, let me just see what closing can Mr. Anati give. You've seen a world where today we are speaking to IPv6 developments. And at the same time, we are also watching the artificial intelligence global development. So with these two, could you just give us in 60 seconds a close-up? IPv6 and the global advancements in AI, how do we think this will affect and influence what we do in Africa?
Yes, thank you for the question. With IPv6 and AI, that's a great combination, and what is going to give us is going to give us more advantage because we can utilize the AI to make IPv6 configuration and setup much secure, and it will give us more enhanced security if we decide to utilize it in a positive manner. And what I would say is we shouldn't treat IPv6 just as a protocol upgrade, but more of a security reset, because IPv4 wasn't actually conceived with security in mind. And we'll have to look at this when we actually when we are implementing IPv6, because Africa, our digital future depends on a secure, stable infrastructure, and that starts with me and you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Mr. Nati there. And also, Nilola, your passing word. We're seeing these two developments, the same question. IPv6 and this evolution, this AI, it's always been there, but then today we are following up with the global advancements. Just in 60 seconds, your passing words.
All right. In 60 seconds, I would continue to reiterate awareness. And IPv6 has come to say it's a production. It's not the future, it is now. So we need to start, developing ourselves around IPv6. We need to start using AI tools, to help us, look at the vulnerabilities, to help us to look at the anomalies that might, happen through cybercrime in IPv6. And again, we should develop an IPv6 security policy so that, we have the policy and we have the implementation. And that's the only way we can help to secure, IPv6 in Africa. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Please, can you just give yourself a round of applause? Okay. Such a wonderful panel I have there. And just like we've never had anything yet, permit me to bring back